Welcome to Gospel Tangents, the best source for Mormon history, science, and theology. I'm Rick Bennett. There will be many Latter-day Saints who are surprised about these early magic and Masonry connections to early Mormonism. Can they be reconciled? In our next conversation with historian Clair Barrus, we'll talk about how he reconciles it and how he thinks that believing faithful Latter-day Saints can reconcile some of these early beliefs and practices. Check out our conversation.
Okay, so maybe we can move on to the other part of what I consider to be kind of an intersection of Masonry and magic. So back to these laymen, and you'll have to show a picture of the holiness to the Lord layman. So the layman, this layman is actually gold colored. It has a gold backing on it. And the reason it has gold on it is to mimic the gold plate. So the word layman actually means plate, which is an interesting thing. We've got a lot of plates that we've been talking about, especially gold plates. We have Enoch's gold plate. Suddenly we have Joseph Smith's magic parchment, which is literally a gold plate, a layman. And we have the gold plates from the Royal Arch, Masonic myth. So we have, and now we're going to talk about more gold plates. So magicians would take this layman or plate, and they would mimic Aaron in the Old Testament. Aaron was told that he would have to wear this ceremonial garb. And so one thing he'd wear is a breastplate. Now remember earlier we talked about the Masonic high priest would wear a breastplate. Aaron would wear a breastplate. Aaron would put the Urim and Thummim. The Urim and Thummim would be attached to his breastplate, to the breastplate. Aaron would also wear a gold plate on his forehead inscribed with the words "Holiness to the Lord." Okay, so we have Joseph Smith's gold-colored, or partially gold-colored at least. We only have black and white images, but it has gold color. That's the holiness to the Lord. It also has other manifestations of the name of God, which is similar to what we were talking about earlier, the Masonic lost name of God and how they're trying to restore that. Well, these laymen have various wordings of the name of God inscribed on them. So a magician would wear either a layman on his forehead when doing magic, but there are other references where they wear the layman as a breastplate. And so here's where I think it's interesting. Joseph Smith, when he translates, Joseph probably when he is doing his stuff with spirits and buried treasure, probably has the laymans with him. Now the laymans would fold in half and then in half again, and when they're folded twice, they were 4 inches by 4 inches, and he had a leather pouch that was 4 by 4, and you could slide the laymans in, and it has a fairly lengthy strap. Now, if Joseph Smith was using this as magicians sometimes did, and this is in the most popular book on magic by Barrett called the Magus. It's published in 1801, and it lit America on fire with magic because it imported all this magic ideology from Europe and published it in America, and there was a surge in magic in America because of Francis Barrett's the Magus. And in there it talks about the magician wearing this thing on his forehead, a layman on his forehead. I found some other references though to magicians wearing them on their chest as a plate, and a gold, which would have been a gold-plated breastplate. And so looking at the length of the strap of the pouch that held the laymen's, it seems more likely Joseph Smith would have worn that around his neck than around his forehead, because it's a lengthy strap. Makes more sense that it was down over here. It wouldn't surprise me if it's something he could have worn it just without people seeing under his shirt while he was doing his conjuring of spirits and trying to do the treasure seeking stuff. I kind of wonder, here's my speculation, if this is something he used in translation. So we know that there was a breastplate that was used in translation. I'm wondering if it could be this magician's breastplate, the holiness to the Lord layman, that is mimicking Aaron's breastplate that's described in the Old Testament, that was known to be used by other magicians at the time.
Okay, so can you summarize?
Yeah, I'm going to actually read this paragraph, which summarizes the fake Leland manuscript successfully implanted the concept of hidden magical practices into the Masonic worldview beginning in the mid-1750s. Dana Ward's sarcastic 1828 critique reflects how the Leland manuscript concepts had been expanded to include the magic culture of the 1820s, a Masonic magic blend into which the Smith family seems to fit. Lucy Mack Smith's curious confession of her draft history, in her draft history, that this Masonic magic took up much of their time, provides an intriguing key into understanding the relationship between Freemasonry and the treasure-seeking practice by the Smiths. So that's my summary, that I can read better than I can speak off the cuff, but I wanted to kind of encapsulate everything there. Yeah.
Well, interesting. All right. Well, do you have anything else you want to share with us as far as with Masonry and magic?
Well, I think we've kind of covered it all. I might think of some things well, let me ask later, you
this kind of as a final wrap up. So I know, it seems like early Mormonism, they didn't hide the fact that there were the temple ceremonies were very similar to Masonry, and in fact they even said it was true Masonry. The endowment was true Masonry, that Joseph had fixed the corrupted Masonry.
Yeah. Whereas
now in our day, we're almost embarrassed about the ties, and there are a lot of people who deny that there's even any connection between Masonry and our temple ceremonies.
Right. Yep. Yeah.
So what would you say to somebody who this is just a new thing? Is this something we should be worried about?
Well, no, we shouldn't be, but we probably, a lot of people probably are. And the reason is because, as I think a lot of people know, there's a vast gap between correlated church history, correlated truth through the correlation department, and what actually happened or what may have happened. We've been talking about a lot of speculative stuff tonight, but what you're talking about is pretty verifiable. There are certainly, there's no question that there is a solid relationship between the temple endowment and Freemasonry. That's rock solid.
And there are some dramatic differences too. I guess I should point that out. It's not like they're identical ceremonies by any stretch. They're in a lot of ways they're very different, but a lot of the symbols are the same, but the ceremonies are dramatically different.
Yes, right. And so when people come across uncomfortable church history truths or facts, it's problematic because we've been raised on correlated history, and the internet now provides an opportunity to have unvarnished material to ingest. And in the black and white paradigm in which the church presents everything, it's true or false, it's right or wrong, that then we we have a problem, I think, or there's a problem. It's setting people up for a problem and a potential failure. I don't think it will be that way several generations from now. I think the church is in the midst of trying to adjust to that. But I don't like the paradigm. There's a couple of paradigms I don't care for, and I think there are valid paradigms that work with Joseph Smith and all of these facts of church history that work well. But black and white, true and false, all that, I think we need to reject that and say, you know what, prophets are human, and they made some mistakes. The idea of a restoration of ancient truths, I think the way I like to look at it is that Joseph Smith was a brilliant prophet in that he was repurposing the raw materials of the esoteric and the questions about the divine and the mystic and the religious, and he was a master at taking these raw ingredients that were right in front of him and building something better, something that spoke better to the people of his time. So we have this magic stuff. We have Masonry. We have Christianity. And I think Joseph takes these and builds something new out of them. And I think that is the prophetic, revelatory, creative thing that Joseph Smith does. He builds that, and then a little bit later, there's more stuff that is informing him, and more building blocks are suddenly visible to him, and he takes those and synergistically builds something out of that, and on and on and on. And it's couched in the terminology of restorationism, restoring ancient truths, and perhaps it is. But I think that another way to look at it is that it's using the raw materials to build Mormonism that speaks to people, that helps them reach to the divine, to answer the questions that everybody has asked from antiquity. And Joseph Smith is providing potential answers for us and helping us as we seek to try to figure out, what's going on this planet, why are we here, and what in the world is going on. So that's kind of how I see it. And with the Masonic temple connection, to me, that's a repurposing of Masonry into something that is more in line with the vision that Joseph Smith continues to uncover and build as he goes through his life. And this is the latest building and refashioning something from his environment into something new that spoke to those people, and it speaks a lot to a lot of people today. And I think that's a better way of looking at these things.
Well, thanks a lot. Well, Clair Barrus, I really appreciate you allowing me in your home and spending so much time talking about things. So.
It's great to have you. I appreciate you coming and taking the time.
All right. Thanks again.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed our conversation with historian Clair Barrus. Clair, thank you so much for taking so much time to sit down and talk with me about early magic and Masonry. I really appreciate it. Not only that, but we used your home for your interview as well as Cheryl's interview, and I really appreciate all the things you did for us there. So thanks again, Clair. I really appreciate it. So our next guest is going to be a little bit of a surprise guest. I'm going to let John Larson from the Sunstone podcast introduce him.
And sometimes I get to talk to celebrities. Mm-hmm. And I can fangirl a little bit. Usually I hide that. But I have none other than Rick Bennett.
No, it's the first time I've been called a celebrity in my entire life. So.
Oh, wow. How does it feel?
Very weird, actually. If you'd like to hear the entire interview uncut, please subscribe to patreon.com/gospeltangents. And for just $5 a month, you can hear the entire interview without any interruption. If you'd like a paperback version of our transcripts, go to Amazon.com and do a search for Gospel Tangents Interview. Also, if you'd like to give the money to me and not Amazon, please subscribe on my website, and I'll be able to send you a transcript as soon as they are completed, and click the subscribe button. You can also find our latest information on Facebook.com/GospelTangents, as well as we're on Twitter @GospelTangents. And don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts. The link is at tinyurl.com/gospeltangents, and you can subscribe there. Also, please give us a 5-star review. If you want to support all of the podcasts as part of the Dialogue Podcast Network, go to lyceum.fm, that's lyceum.fm, and do a search for Dialogue Podcast Network or Gospel Tangents, because, that's a pretty cool one too. Thanks again for listening. Click here to subscribe, here for a transcript, and over here we've got some of our great videos. Thanks again.